Hey everybody, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about the latest release from SteelSeries. This is the new Arctis Nova 7P Gen 2. P is for the PlayStation version, hence the blue branding on the box, but there's also the X version, of course, if you're looking for the Xbox compatibility. It's basically the exact same headset minus one change on the controls, which we'll talk about later. But regardless of the platform or color you choose, it retails for $200 US. Now this was sent to me by SteelSeries for review. It won't affect what I say about it, but I always want to disclose that, and there is no monetary exchange for making this video. I don't accept money to make content, and they have no idea what I'm going to say about it, but I just always want to disclose that. So let's just get right into the nuts and bolts of everything about the new Nova 7 Gen 2. And I'm going to start with the transmitter. This transmitter is particular to the Nova 7P and PC version. So basically there's no switch on it for cross-platform support for Xbox because this is the version that does not support Xbox. If you get the Nova 7X Gen 2, that will support everything, including PlayStation. It's more of a licensing play. So just to be blunt, the reason why you would get this model is one, I guess, if you want the blue box, but also if you want the right volume wheel that normally controls game to chat mix on PC and Xbox. On the PlayStation version, that's mapped to microphone side tone. Other than that, it's basically the same headset. Now, I'm not a super fan of this transmitter design, only because when we look at the older Nova 3, which like the 3 wireless, which came out a little while ago, it hasn't been too long, the overall dimensions of the Nova 3 transmitter is basically the same, but this offset is huge because I could plug this transmitter directly into the front of my PS5, the older version, and still use the adjacent USB-A port. This design, even though it's a PlayStation model, does not allow you to use the adjacent USB-A port unless you use this long cable that's included. I am glad to see that they include this cable to make it easier because this helps alleviate that issue. It's a USB-A to a USB-C extension cord, so you just plug the dongle in like so, and now I can basically place the transmitter where I want, but if you didn't need to do that, now you're dealing with this wire. One advantage of this is depending on your desk setup or where your computer is located, this allows you to put a transmitter in the more ideal location, giving you better wireless performance. On the note of wireless performance, I do a thing called the toilet test where I test the wireless range because we don't get wireless headsets for the pure audiophile bliss, it's for the convenience and flexibility. And this range isn't drastically improved over the older Nova 7. We have the Nova 3 transmitter range that got closer to 40 to 50 feet. This particular guy, at least in my current setup with the extension cord, I'm getting about 25 to 30 feet before it breaks up. And that's going through basically a couple walls, and I have a wireless access point above that area. Almost the exact same performance as my Nova 7X did in the exact same spot. I used the same extension, put the transmitter in the same spot. I wish the range was a little bit greater because frankly a couple other models get further, but at least it's stable. I never had issues with the older Nova 7, and this didn't give me any issues either. I just wish the range was a little bit longer. As far as additional accessories in the box go, this is another nice thing to have. It's a USB charge cable because this thing has improved battery life over the older Nova 7 as well. Now you get 54 hours of battery life on a single charge, and this cable allows you to rapidly charge it because a 15-minute charge will give you another 6 hours of gameplay. So if you forgot to charge it and it died the night before, just throw it on the cable for 15 minutes while you get your favorite snack, hop on, and you can game for the rest of the night. This is a nice little addition as well, and that is the analog cable. What's nice about this is if you are still needing to play on Xbox, and let's say you bought this model and that's the one you're stuck with, as an example, you can plug this into the headset, use it as an analog headset, and plug it directly into your Xbox. It won't support simultaneous aux or 3.5 plus wireless at the same time, because basically once you plug this in, it turns the headset off. Which leads me to the controls. The controls have always been one of my favorite things with the Nova 7 lineup. To me, it's almost perfect, and this is just my own personal preference. I typically prefer flip to mute mic, and that's usually the case for most situations just because it's so fast. When I have family come into the room and I'm talking to my friends, it's nice to quickly mute it. This one is at least placed in a very easy to find and tactile position. The switch feels great. The volume wheel has a hard stop, very fast and easy to adjust. This is really helpful because if you plug in the analog connection into this headset, now this volume wheel will still work, or you can use the output. If you max this out, you can adjust the volume on your controller. Now, even though I don't have the flip to mute, I do have a telescoping microphone, just like the older Nova 7, and it feels relatively the same. It's just as smooth. There's some resistance here, and if the cable or like the mic boom has a little kink in it, it might feel a little bit rougher coming in. That's just physics. but overall it smooths out and goes in and out no problem. On the right cup, you have the USB-C charge port, and then you get the chat mix wheel. Now I say that because that's a habit of mine, because I've always used the Nova 7X for the chat mix wheel. This is relabeled because this is a side tone wheel, and the one downside with the P version, the PlayStation version, is you have no game to chat mix at all on the computer. So either get the PC version or the Xbox version in order to use the game to chat mix wheel. And then if you play on the X version on PlayStation, this wheel just won't have any functionality at all, but at least on PC and Xbox, you have the ability to do game and chat. So if you're exclusively a PlayStation gamer, then yes, still get the P version just because it's nice to have a little extra control and a wheel that otherwise would not have been used. This also has a hard stop, which I like because again, it's very tactile and fast. And then you have the power button, press and hold to turn it on, pretty self-explanatory. And then the separate button for Bluetooth. The Bluetooth is simultaneous. This is a huge thing. I'm really excited that they kept that because that would have been horrible if they got rid of it on the new model. And the Bluetooth works great. There's no dedicated volume for the Bluetooth control on the headset itself. Instead, once you're paired to your headset, you use your phone or mobile device, whatever's connected via Bluetooth, to control the volume. Now you still get removable plates, just like the older Nova 7. So everything that fit the Nova 7 will still work on the new Gen 2. They're magnetically attached, so you can make it pretty easy to customize. And the same thing happens with the suspension strap, which is also improved over the Nova 7. So let's get into the comparisons of the Nova 7, seeing how I brought that up. So one, they look and feel almost identical. Now this has the freeze pads because I liked the way they felt. I'm not knocking these. I'm going to talk about the stock pads in a moment. This still has the same metal headband. On the new Nova 7 Gen 2, there's a extra coating on it, and it just feels a little bit more grippy, and I think it can look premium, but to the naked eye, they basically look the exact same thing. This feels more grippy. I don't know if that's because my Nova 7's like 3 years old, and I'll be honest, I've used this headset a ton, because this is the one that was always hooked up to my Xbox for at least 2 years, in the midst of testing other gear. It's been a solid headset. Now you will see the controls are identical. There is clearer legends on the new one, so I like that they actually made it easier to see what each of them do. But effectively, it's the exact same design, minus the pad change that I did. Otherwise, there's really no difference, and the legend are more clear on the other cup side as well. The suspension strap, this is kind of what segued into this. This feels more premium than the old one. I never had a problem with the old suspension strap. It's nice and stretchy. This had the green color on it because the Xbox edition, this is the 7X. The new one, even though it's a P, it's more neutral. And it just feels nice. It looks good, very understated. There's really just nothing flashy about the headset, so from a gamer perspective, I think it's a very classy design. Just like the original Nova 7, you get full rotation on the cups and you get pivot. The pivot isn't huge, but the overall geometry easily lets the headset maintain a pretty good seal. Clamp force is comparable. This one has a slightly lighter clamp force than my Nova 7, which I would have expected the opposite just because that headset's older. I thought it would have stretched out. It's comparable. It's within like 20 or 30 grams. But the comfort is still absolutely fantastic. SteelSeries headsets just fit in my head better than almost any other headset out there. So I've been very keen on this in the past. And when I talk about comfort and ease of use and accessibility and all of that, I just love when I put this on, it just seems to fit. The suspension strap distributes the weight very evenly, and the articulation of the cups make it very easy for me to get a consistent seal and fit. Like the Nova 7, they also have a rotating cup, so very easy to adjust and put around my neck. And not all headsets have that, so to me this is just a more versatile, flexible chassis, and it's always been one of my favorite parts about the Nova 7. The controls in the chassis design to me just work great. These aren't the largest pads you can get on a headset, but they're quite large, and to me they're comfortable enough for a variety of ears. They might be a little bit short to some people, but there's good width, and the depth is staggered at 20 millimeters up front and 25 millimeters of depth in the rear. So it clears most ears. You just might feel a little bit of a touch at the top or bottom depending on how you wear it. The noise isolation isn't bad considering this has a breathable sport fabric. I think their stock pads are great. I've never had an issue with it. I think the Nova 7 in particular has had one of the best stock pads on the market because they're really compliant with minimal press, which is great for glasses comfort. And then this little leatherette seal helps with the bass delivery and also some noise isolation, which is surprisingly good considering how breathable the pads are. It's worth pointing out that the new Nova 7 Gen 2 uses the exact same pad design as the old Nova 7, so all of the aftermarket pads available for it are just as applicable and compatible with the brand new one. There is a slight change in the sound signature on the Gen 2. Basically, it just has a little bit more bass, but the rest of the tuning is the same. So generally speaking, all of the EQ profiles that have been made for the older Nova 7 can be applicable on the new Gen 2. I do really like the stock pads, but if you did want to switch them out, I will have links in the description below for both Freeze and the Stealth should you decide you want to upgrade or customize the look. So I'm sure to a lot of people familiar with the Nova 7, this sounds like another Nova 7, and that's because it's the Gen 2, it's not a Nova 8, so there's a lot of stuff that carried over from the original, but they did add some key things here. So obviously the battery life improvements are welcome. The clearer legends to make it easier to see the labels on the buttons, that's great touch. They advertise having a new and improved microphone, which I will show you in a moment. And then the big one with this guy for me that a lot of people liked, and one of the selling points of the Nova 3 and 5 over this has been onboard Parametric EQ, allowing you to fully customize the sound profile to sound exactly the way you want it. Not necessarily what I tell you to do, but you can customize it to your personal preference. So I'm really happy that the Nova 7 finally has that, and they have a good mic now, right? Let's find out.
All right, and this is what my voice sounds like using the new SteelSeries Arctis Nova 7 Generation 2 microphone. And I was expecting more, to be blunt. I don't think this is really much progress at all from the older one. And I'm going to pause for a second just so you can hear the white noise, because this is somewhat of a noisy mic from a hiss and background standpoint. That's kind of crazy. And when you enable and max out side tone, you can hear a lot of that white noise as well. And the white noise is impacted by the EQ settings we do. So I want to point out just one quick thing, and then I'm going to show you some presets. So right now this is the flat preset, and if I go to flat edited, I lose gain and my voice gets quieter. So this is a custom EQ I did to try to start shaping the voice, but I noticed I lost so much overhead that it wasn't loud enough for a lot of use cases, because I'm not speaking loudly when I'm playing with friends. I'm just talking at a normal volume. So I didn't like that I lost some of the volume here. Just to quickly go over some of the presets, this is what balance sounds like. This is what broadcast high pitch sounds like. This is what broadcast low pitch sounds like. This is clarity high pitch. This is clarity low pitch. Deep voice, which I think sounds decent. Less nasal, which doesn't really sound much less nasal. I was hoping for more here. And the dreaded walkie-talkie effect that we all love so much. Just as a quick litmus test, I'm going back to the flat preset because I want to show you a couple other microphones. So this is what my voice sounds like on the Arctis Nova 7X, the one that came out 3 years ago, and there is not much of a change here. I was expecting more, frankly, because the new Nova 3 sounds noticeably better. And just so you don't think I'm blowing smoke, this is the much less expensive Arctis Nova 3 that came out earlier this year, which also has onboard Parametric EQ, similar drivers, it just does not have simultaneous Bluetooth, so this is an interesting one. Alright, so we're back on the Nova 7 Gen 2, and I want to show you a couple quick settings before I switch over to Sonar. So right now I was doing the EQ stuff and showing audio profiles for the 2.4 gigahertz wireless mic connection. You can do different profiles for the audio, for the primary audio 2.4 transmitter, and then Bluetooth, of course. Now, this is the same type of configuration you can do on the SteelSeries Sonar mobile app. So if you use the companion app, you can browse over 250 games, make a lot of the same changes here, but you can't do and build your own custom EQ. You'll have to do that on the PC. It's still really nice to have this selection because it's super convenient, and if you're a console player, being able to switch through audio presets is quite nice. And as you can see, the selection is just absurd. So this is a good thing. Very quickly, on the other settings page, you can handle power management, mic LED brightness, which I have set to max because I like to know I'm muted. Bluetooth default, which turns on Bluetooth every time you turn the headset on, but it doesn't turn off Bluetooth every time you turn the headset off. So you have to kind of juggle two power buttons at that point. And then Bluetooth call is self-explanatory. If Bluetooth is enabled to use the microphone for Bluetooth, you can have it do nothing to game audio, reduce game audio by 12 decibels, or mute it entirely. So now we switched over to SteelSeries Sonar on the PC side, which will not save to the headset, but there is an amazing feature for microphone enhancement that works on any mic, but the difference on the 7 Gen 2 is quite drastic. So I'm going to enable this now, and you can hear a clear difference in clarity. It gets rid of a lot and pretty much all of the background noise issues and hiss that I deal with this particular microphone. and then I add a mild compressor. So already I think this is a much better sounding mic, and it's much more passable on the PC side. And my equalizer does a low cut because there's a lot of weird handling noise with this headset. There's no like high pass filter for impact and like wind whooshing through it, if you will. So just some mild EQ. You can lift the bass a little bit, but I basically created this guy, a high pass filter at 60 hertz with a 0.7 Q. You can do that with the custom EQ side on the engine to save to the headset to get rid of that handling noise. But again, keep in mind you lose some of the mic sensitivity for some reason. So I don't usually recommend custom, at least for now. There are additional settings on the mic like noise reduction and noise gate. You really don't need to use either. In fact, noise reduction is disabled when Clearcast is on because that does all of the work for you. And you don't really need a noise gate with the Clearcast enabled because it functions as a noise gate anyway. If I stop talking, dead silent, which is great. One last thing I want to point out is the microphone side tone is crazy loud on this, but for some reason, and it's in real time, the brightness and hiss, if you will, from the side tone is also impacted by the EQ that you save to the headset. So if you do a bright custom EQ or use one of the presets on SteelSeries engine, you're going to hear even louder hiss, and it gets a bit distracting. So on the PlayStation version, I really can't set the gain or the side tone wheel over about 50% or it gets too loud. The Xbox version is typically a little bit different because it's a digital control, so there'll be a higher threshold there, but the side tone hiss can get distracting. At least it's really loud in real time.
Now pivoting over to the sound quality and measurement side, this is how the new Nova 7 Gen 2 measures on my rig, and this is an average of left and right channels. If we look at both channels, it's a slight channel imbalance where the left channel is slightly louder than the right in this upper mid-range, but it's minimal and it's not really noticeable. I just wanted to point that out. So when we look at the average and I enable the frequency response of the older Nova 7, a couple things stand out. The 7 Gen 2 basically has a little bit more bass than the original Nova 7, which I didn't feel it needed. There's already quite a bit of bass here, but if people are chasing that strong bass profile and you like the impact from immersive gaming, you'll probably like that change. The rest of the tuning as you approach the mid-range and treble area is so close that you could effectively say this is a difference of driver variation, and meaning that I could measure 3 of these and I'll get a slight different measurement with each one. My particular one, the Gen 2, has a slightly larger scoop at 4,500 hertz or so, which this is like an area where perceived detail comes into play. So although I'm not a huge fan of this recess, it is a safer tune because it's not going to come across as harsh sounding to anybody. This is a darker sounding headset with a lot of bass, and the bass does carry into the mid-bass region, so it can sound a little bit thick and muddy to some people if this is too much. But thankfully, custom EQ exists, and with the Nova 7 Gen 2, you can save parametric EQ to it, so we can customize it and make it sound basically however we want. Out of the box, though, this is just a bass-forward headset with a recess up here. Now, the only real issue I have with the tuning is this 8 kilohertz peak is still quite strong. It measures strong on my rig, and on certain things you play, it won't be as noticeable, but there are definitely some games or music tracks where you'll get a very harsh S, like a sibilant S, or metallic sounds, glass breaking, things like that will come across a little bit more forward thanks to this peak. Now, as I mentioned, we can do custom EQ, which is great. So this is my custom EQ for the music side, which is not making a lot of adjustments, but to me, this is a huge improvement in sound, and I designed this to make it so you can customize it yourself. I'm walking you through these settings because if you're using, saving this to your headset itself for gaming on console, you can't just auto import it. Otherwise, if you're playing on PC and you're leveraging actual SteelSeries Sonar, I will have a link in the description below where if you click it, it'll auto import and provide all of these numbers for you. So the first number is 150 hertz, minus 2 decibels with a 0.5 Q. Keep in mind, this one is set to low shelving. This is tabling off all of the bass below that. So if you still find that it's too bass heavy, I could switch this to minus 5 and you can see what that does to the sound. I'm going to go back to minus 2 here. Then on the next setting at 400 hertz, I did a 3 decibel lift at a Q factor of 2. So 3 for the decibels and then 400 hertz there. So pretty self-explanatory. This one here, I want to highlight, you see 4.62. Don't type 4.62. It's just the way this graphical interface rounds numbers because that's 4.62 kilohertz. So when you type it in, you have to type 4620 because we are actually addressing 4,620 hertz. And when I hit enter, that changes it to 4.62. I did a gain of 3.5 decibels with a Q factor of 1. This notch right here, which you can play with, is the scoop that I'm doing to reduce the 8,000 hertz peak. I did minus 9 decibels at 8,300 hertz, 5.5 Q, and if you feel like it's too dark, you can just slowly lift this up a little bit to see if you find that sweet spot for your hearing. Then I do just a slight lift at 12,000 hertz to kind of balance out how much I'm tabling off this 8 kilohertz peak. You can switch this to a high shelf if you want to lift treble as a whole, but this is personal preference. Treble is much more of a personal preference thing, so I kind of went with a generally safe tune, and this is what I use for immersive gaming, single player stuff, casual racing, movie watching, and music listening. If you're playing FPS or competitive gaming, we want to table off that bass even further. I didn't want to lose all immersion, but frankly, the bass profile was strong enough that it was drowning out some of the footstep cues I cared about. So the first setting is minus 7 decibels at 20 hertz with a Q factor of 0.5. Then I added 110 hertz peaking EQ, so 2 decibel lift, 110 hertz, 1.5 Q factor, and again, peaking EQ. I still have that low shelf from earlier, but I made it even lower. It's minus 5 decibels at 150 hertz, 0.5 Q, and again, just remember this one is a low shelf. I still have this fill in here at 400 hertz to kind of fill in that gap I had in the mid-range. It's plus 3.5 decibels at 400 hertz, 1.8 Q. A little bit of a different tune here, 1.4 decibel lift at 1,500 hertz, Q factor of 2. So again, type in 1,500 here, not 1.5, and then hit enter. Then here we have at 4,620 hertz, a gain of 4.2 with a Q factor of 1. 8,300 hertz, minus 9 decibels at Q factor of 5.5. Again, I still don't like that crazy strong peak. And this one is a little different. I did only 1 decibel at 12,000 hertz with a Q factor of 1, only because if I went any brighter, it really pushes the limit for me for Apex Legends. Some of the abilities and sound effects from that game can be a little bit bright sounding, as is the mid bass for footsteps, which is a good thing. It's a different kind of tune. But some games you might still find this too bright. So play around with the treble. You could always adjust this slider to increase or reduce it further. And the same thing happens with the bass side of things. But overall, this is a good general purpose FPS preset that's going to work with a huge variety of games. You can enable spatial audio, though I don't generally recommend it for competitive play. It's fine for immersive if you want a little bit more of a reflect and a spatial sound, like a wider image where there's some reverbs and delays and things like that to make the headset sound larger than it is. So this is all a personal preference thing. I just generally don't use it because I play more FPS games than other things. Volume boost isn't really necessary here because this Nova 7 Gen 2 gets quite loud with the volume limiter disabled. So make sure you turn that off if you didn't already, if you find it too quiet. Otherwise, if it's still too quiet, you can boost this by a few decibels and get some of that back. Smart volume is like an auto volume leveler, kind of like loudness EQ for Windows, but I don't think it reacts fast enough, so I wouldn't use this for competitive play. It's fine if you listen to stuff that's really quiet and then gets really loud. It'll help kind of compress it a little bit. And it gives you an idea here. It's a slow compressor is the best way to describe it. Now, you can do a lot of these custom EQs for chat. You can do these custom EQs for media. And thanks to SteelSeries Sonar, if you route your music player to media and your friends to Discord chat, I want to highlight this. I don't really care as much for the EQ, but Clearcast AI noise cancellation on chat is awesome because that means all of your friends now get noise filtering so you don't hear their background noise, and it cleans up all of your friends' audio. So I've enabled this a lot for my friends chat and do a compressor so they're all a more similar volume, and frankly, they just sound better to me. When it comes to gaming performance, even if we look at the stock sound signature and just plug and play, a lot of people are still going to like this headset. It's not that it's bad necessarily out of the box. It has a pretty common sound preference that a lot of gamers kind of like and expect. So I can see why SteelSeries is sticking to that. I'm not trying to audiophile up every gaming product to sound like neutral or crazy clear or something. It really comes down to personal preference. On a lot of immersive games, people do want a lot more bass. This is obviously very strong in the bass department. We've covered it on the measurement side. And what that translates to into gaming is if you're playing games like Helldivers or even the new Battlefield 6, when there's a lot of explosions, this type of sound profile is going to deliver a lot of bass there, and it can sound very immersive, and I can see why people would like that. If you're playing a game like Battlefield 6, as immersive as that part will sound on the bass department, having too much bass can overpower other more subtle details. That's why I typically prefer two different sound signatures based off the types of games you are playing. Now, SteelSeries makes over 250 game presets right now. I haven't tested all of them. I can tell you from experience that I have tried a lot of their presets just to kind of mess with it. I don't always agree with the sound signature per game. Like when I play that game, it's not necessarily my favorite EQ, but there are some EQ presets out there that can help make things better. The general like FPS one can help quite a bit. And I think that's why they stick to a more specific sound signature across the Nova lineup, is because they keep that in mind when they're doing this huge range of custom EQs. The rest of the sound signature is totally fine. It's actually still better than a variety of competitive models in this price range. So when you just plug and play, a lot of people are just going to hear it and think this sounds great, and they're going to be happy with it. It's just because I've heard and listened to so many different audio products out there, certain sound qualities just stand out to me a little bit differently. But as far as an out-of-the-box experience goes, I can do all the immersive stuff. I got into Cyberpunk again recently, got into Helldivers again, which to me is, I consider more of an immersive game, even though it's kind of like PvE with your buddies. And I do a lot of racing games. This sound signature is just great for a huge flexible variety of games that you play without even touching all the presets. So I don't want to knock it. It's just not necessarily going to sound as crazy clear or resolving as a more expensive headset like, you know, the Odyssey Maxwell, for example, or even the Fractalscape once you've done some EQ. Okay, so we made it to the end of the video, and there's a lot of things to like about this because it's what the 7 was, but now they added parametric EQ, like the onboard parametric EQ, and you still get the simultaneous Bluetooth. So when the Nova 3 and 5 came out and it had the new parametric EQ functions and all of the games you could browse from on your phone, everyone wanted that, but they didn't want to give up the simultaneous Bluetooth. So you kind of had to choose what was more important to you. And I'm really happy to say that you don't have to anymore. You can have both. I think the microphone performance in its current state is the biggest miss at the moment. And I hope that by the time my headset roundup video comes out, there's yet another firmware update that improves it or addresses these concerns. In its current state, I just don't understand why it's performing the way it is. It's just hissy, it's not that loud, and it just leaves a little bit to be desired. Other than that, it's a great headset, as was the old one. So I think they're sitting on something that could be incredible once they address a couple little nuances. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching and making it to the end. I hope you got the information you were looking for. Stay safe, and I'll see you at the next one. Take care.